Hello and welcome into the Take 10 podcast. This is Alex Rue of Big Ten Network, and today's guests are former Ohio State star Jared Sullinger and Big Ten Network Manager of Research Harold Shelton. Let's get into it.
Take a look, listen, and enjoy. Look at here.
With the catch, the finish! Oh, my goodness! What a catch!
Oh,
Energy,
my goodness.
enthusiasm. It's picked off! Selfish! Brilliant!
He's still going! Touchdown!
All right, we will get to Jared Sullinger in just a moment. First, a word from our sponsor, Northwestern University's School of Professional Studies. You can build a solid foundation in the strategic, creative, and analytic skills that are essential for success in the business of sports in the master's program in sports administration at Northwestern University. Find out more at sps.northwestern.edu/sports. Great program. I highly encourage you to check out. If you're interested in working in sports, working at a place like Big Ten Network, go to that website I just mentioned. Always appreciate their support. Shout out to NUSPS, as always. All right, let's get to Jared Sullinger. The interview starts right now. All right, I am very pleased to be joined by former Ohio State basketball star, NBA vet Jared Sullinger. Jared, how's it going, man?
Oh, I can't complain, man. Living the dream. Wife, 2 kids, actually twins, so I can't complain at all.
Yeah, man, you're all grown up now. Still, you got the jersey behind you, you got the beanie going on, so
Yeah.
Clearly staying close to those Buckeye roots. Last time, you hooped professionally. It looks like you were over in China for a couple years. We saw you this summer on ESPN and the Carmen's crew coaching the TBT squad. And now, it looks like you're working on your next opportunity, right? So tell us about that a little bit.
I'm just patiently waiting, man. I'm just patiently waiting for somebody to give me a shot. I feel better than ever. I'm playing better than ever. And I actually look apart. So I'm just excited for an opportunity from anybody to be able to get back there out there on the floor.
Yeah, I know you're trying to give another shot in the league. You're a dad now as well, like you mentioned. So what's your daily routine kind of like now, trying to balance fatherhood, having a family, and then trying to work your way back to the court?
Well, just wake up every morning at 7 o'clock with the twins, changing diapers, giving them breakfast, finding time to relieve my wife so she can go ahead and get showered and get ready for her day as I get showered and ready for my day. And from there, it's just basketball. I'm probably busy from 10 o'clock to maybe like 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a lot of basketball. And then I just come back home and I'm a dad all over again. And, back in the day, I used to have time to relax and kind of get your thoughts together. Being a dad now and trying to be in the best shape of my life, it's the biggest challenge I've ever been a part of, but it's a challenge I'm willing to conquer.
Yeah, so what kind of work are you putting in on the court? Is it a lot of individual stuff? Are you doing any fives, any threes?
It's a little bit of both. I do individual work with my guy, LD Williams, who played at Wake Forest. He's an individual coach now. So I've been with him the last 2 months. And then we got a couple guys here that, are still searching for jobs that played in the Big Ten. Javon Best that played at Michigan State. Nick Ward that played at Michigan State. Demetrius Treadwell that played at Akron. So we got a lot of guys that usually are having jobs, but since it's COVID year, that things are kind of iffy, I should say. And we're playing 5-on-5 every chance we can get.
So is it more difficult or less stressful than raising twins?
It's probably more difficult because just finding 10 is the hardest part.
And last family question: Are you the type of dad that's gonna dress the twins up in like the matching outfits, so they can be in the Christmas card matching and stuff like that?
Yeah, at times, we try to avoid that. Me and my wife try to avoid that, but at times you have to, just because it's too cute not to. So we try to avoid it best way we can, but man, some things you just can't avoid.
All right, so we're gonna work backwards when we talk ball a little bit in your career, because I'm fascinated with like overseas hoops and especially you playing in China, because I was looking at some of your stats, and you hear the stories about like Stephon Marbury and Jimmer Fredette dropping 70. It looks like you were putting about 30 and 20 a game over there. So like when that type of stat sheet gets filled up night after night, are you just like a superhero over there to the locals, or how does it go?
It's different over there in China. In China, when you lose a game, it's your fault. When you win a game, the domestic players get all the love, and so you're just kind of there. You're kind of there, and I think that was the beautiful part is just finding ways to win. You know, knowing that you're the focal point every night. They're going to double team you. They're going to do something every night, but you have to find a way to win. And that was I would say the turning point for me when it came to basketball because you know I was in the NBA. I kind of lost a little bit of the love just because the business side of it. And then when I went to China, it wasn't really a lot of business. It's more about you, how you have to win this game, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I found the love again. And so it's just so different over there where it's a team sport, but a lot of it relies on you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up kind of the love of the game because I read a quote, when I was reading up on you. It was in the Boston Globe, and you said that you've told people that college is kind of the last time you play basketball in like its purest form. So if you could expand on that a little bit, like what do you mean by that statement? And how did your experience at Ohio State reflect that form of hoop?
I mean, that's just the last time you actually playing for, the bigger picture, for a conference championship, for a tournament championship, for NCAA championship. Like those things that you do, that you buy into, everybody's buying into it. So at the next level, everybody's not going to buy into their role and what the coach wants you to do because everybody's trying to get paid. And understandably, that's understand, like you can understand that. But at the end of the day, like college basketball is the last pure form of basketball because that's the only time you can get everybody to connect and have one common goal, and that's the win. There's nothing else.
Yeah, and I'm very like pro player and want guys to get the bag they deserve and all that. But I do wonder, when you see things like the G League Select pop up and players forego that experience, when they could be playing that form of basketball you experience. I mean, look at you now. You got your Ohio State gear on. You're in the Columbus area. Ohio State has a very like great orbit, I think, of their former players kind of still being a community. You see it in the TBT. So where do you fall on that whole, I don't know if it's a debate, but kind of situation with players that are trying to go to the G League and just forego college altogether?
I mean, some of them are prepared for it. Not everybody's not prepared for it. There's an exception to every rule. There's some players that should not touch college, just because they're exceptional talents. You see it in James Wiseman. He didn't really play college basketball, but he's an exceptional talent. He shouldn't have to. I would like to see that rule over change, but at the same time, it has to be. It's an iffy rule just because there's a lot of people that think they're better than what they are, and and NBA stands for no boys allowed. It's a man's game. Honestly, it's a man's game. Everybody's not equipped for that battle.
For sure, for sure. And, speaking of no boys allowed, I mean, that era of Ohio State hoops from pretty much Thad Matta's whole run, right? From Conley and Oden to Evan Turner to your guys' squads. What was it, do you think, about him as a person and a program builder that allowed such an elite level of basketball for so long there?
He just went after the same type of guys. Same type of guys. Family oriented, all about goals and competitors. And that's what, if you look down the long list of guys that, all the way back to '05, all he wanted was competitors. And that's what they did, was compete. And that's what made the Mata era so strong and so much impact, just because he just recruited guys that compete. And that's all that we cared about, was winning and competing.
All right, so your 2 seasons there, there's plenty of memories to choose from, a lot of hardware, a lot of accomplishments. Yeah, the Big Ten regular season championships, Big Ten tournament champs, Final Four. When you look back, like, what's a favorite memory or two? It doesn't even have to be from a game, but what do you kind of tell people about when you're telling old war stories and you latch on to when you reflect on your college days?
The intensity that Coach Mata had. He was never ashamed of calling anybody out. That's one thing. He coached everybody up to their fullest level, and he understood mindsets and attitudes. Everybody can't be coached at a certain level of intensity of yelling, and he understood that. He picked players' brains, and he was just so intense, man. And so, long story short, a player, I'm not going to throw him out there. He messed up in class. He was goofing off in class. And I just remember him yelling at all the seniors and telling them it was their fault. And it was their fault. He was red in the face and just yelling at them. And he made the seniors run instead of making the person that, was goofing off in class run. And that's when I realized, like, that's the type of culture he wanted, was his upperclassmen to lead. So if somebody made a mistake, an underclassman makes a mistake, the junior and senior always took the blame. They always took the hit, and that's the type of culture that you want, because as a freshman, you look at that and you realize, like, I don't want to be like that my junior or senior year. And it's just creating leaders on and off the court, and that's just what Coach Matta did.
Yeah, and the mentality, you don't want to let the upperclassmen down either. You don't want to be the one missing class, making them run.
Oh yeah, you never heard the end of it.
Right. All right. So we like to do this with players, especially players from great programs where there's a lot of guys to choose from. I'm curious if you could list out, if you had to take 5 from the Thad Matta era, could be your squad, could be the Odin Conley squad, could be, anytime he was there, and you had to run up with 5 against anybody. Who are you taking at each position and why?
Each position. Mike Conley at the 1. Mike Conley at the 1. At the 2, I probably push Daquan Cook or I don't know. This is tough. Let me go Mike at the 1, Evan Turner at the 2. At the 3, it's probably be Lighty. Lighty at the 3. At the 4, he's my personal favorite. It'd probably be Deshaun. And then at the 5, hands down, Greg. I never seen a human being like him play basketball and be able to be that skilled, that big, that strong. Hands down, Greg at the 5.
All right, so you did well. I put you on the spot. Does that mean would you insert yourself into that lineup, or are you just
No, because you got to go with the right matchups. I wouldn't play me and Greg together, so you got to put Deshaun at the 4.
Okay, we'll call you the coach then, just like Carmen's crew. But no, I appreciate you doing that on the spot. I definitely put it on you there a little bit. All right, so that was a great era of Ohio State basketball, and not gonna lie, when Thad when it turned over from Thad, I thought maybe Ohio State would take a big step back, and they really haven't under Chris Holtmann at all. I've been really impressed with his ability to find good players, plug and play. Guys like DJ Carton or Wesson, leave, graduate, whatever. They're back next year with guys and pieces that just fit. So it's really impressive to me what he's done there, just being able to be ranked year after year. How do you kind of consume the teams now that you're obviously been gone? Are you watching every game? Are you living and dying with every game, or is it more of a removed observation process?
No, we're still watching every day. We watch every day, and I think Coach Holtman's done a great job at what he's done at Ohio State, especially coming after the best coach that ever coached in our program. He has the most wins in all those Big Ten championships. I mean, that's pretty much a lot of pressure, and for him to come in and nonstop, every year is a winning year. Every year we're in the thick of the Big Ten, and the last couple years since Coach Holtman's taken over, Big Ten has been the best conference in college basketball every year. And so for him to always have like a top 5 finish, and now we're starting to see his recruits and his team and the development of his team, and you see it this year. Those are all his guys. It looks great. And with Coach Holtmann, he has a great system to the point where the plug and play will always work, because we know as a team our roles. And I think that's the beautiful part, is like everybody has a great role on our team, and everybody follows that instruction. So Coach Holtmann does a great job at everything, from the defensive standpoint, offensive standpoint. And, he's just going to get better from from here on.
Man, some programs are just blessed, man. Like the Packers went from Favre to Rodgers. You guys just go from Matta to Holtman. It's some programs got it like that. Also, I do want to say I think E.J. Liddell, the current big man, current 4, he's got a little bit of your game in him. He can step out, hit the shot a little bit, can bully his way inside. I don't know if you've heard or seen that. If you agree.
I mean, he can play. He can play. There's no doubt about it. EJ can play. He's still learning the game. And the thing I love about EJ is that he doesn't force anything. As much as the offense is around him, he's averaging around 15, 16 points a game, but he's only taking like 11 shots a game. And there's sometimes he takes less than 10 shots a game and still ends up with 17. I mean, the efficiency, the impact that he has on both sides of the ball, I think that's huge for us to go forward. I think he's a mismatch at that 4 or 5 spot.
All right, so I was doing my homework for this interview, talked to Joey Lane a little bit, former walk-on at Ohio State. He said that, when you guys run 5s or whatever in the summer, that you like picking him because, he won't shoot the ball and won't take shots away. And, that just kind of goes into the Ohio State, like, walk-on hotspot culture. Like, you guys got Joey, Smoke, you got Titus. Like, what is going on there with the walk-ons, man? And why do they got so much confidence?
Honestly, it's just they're not really walk-ons, man, to be honest with you. If Joey really wanted to play Division I basketball, he could play somewhere else. Honestly, he can play. And the reason why I pick Joey all the daggone time is because Joey plays the right way. If he doesn't have a shot, he moves it. If on the defense end, he's trying to rotate. He's always available in the corner when I need him. When somebody double me in the post, I know he's in the corner. He's ready to shoot every time. So there's reasons why I picked Joey. It's not because he's the walk-on. It's because he plays the right way. So let's get that straight. But guys like that, Mark Titus, Joey, I mean, honestly, they really could play elsewhere. They just chose Ohio State for whatever reason. And, at the end of the day, it worked out.
All right. I'm sure he'll appreciate you gassing him up. I'm going to make him listen to this, and he'll have a big head now. All right, before we wrap up, Jared, I do want to talk pros a little bit, both, current NBA. I want to get your picks for this season. But before that, I do want to talk about your Celtics days. You were a draft pick of Boston, which meant you were on a team with, a lot of legends, and Kevin Garnett in particular. So I'm curious, which level of ball has the best trash talkers? Is NBA?
NBA without question.
Yeah.
I fouled Kevin Garnett one time, and he told me, he said, I got more turnovers than you got NBA minutes. And I was stuck. There was nothing I could say. And so when you talk about trash talk, it's a whole nother level at the NBA level, honestly.
So did you hear more wild things from KG from your own team or from opponents on the court?
It was a little bit of everybody. There's a lot of things you can't say to the guys out there because they're all established. In college, there's a couple guys you can pick on verbally out there with your words because you're more established than them. But when you look across the NBA, everybody's established, and you can't really let the words fly like you want them to.
Especially now because everyone can hear it with the no crowds and the hot mics and all that.
Right.
And you were with another Buckeye in Boston, Evan Turner. I've read Mark Titus's book about how Evan's kind of an agitator a little bit. Maybe that just applies to him, but did he talk that mess like on or off the court at all, or is the Titus example kind of exaggerated?
50-50. It's 50-50. When Evan wants to agitate you, he can agitate you, but when he's not always about agitating you. So they're like 50-50. It's like 50-50. But ET's one of the best teammates you can have, honestly. He's never gonna put you down. He's always gonna pick you up. He's always gonna put confidence in you when you need it. I had a couple of times where I wasn't making shots, and every time Evan passed it to me, he's telling me, shoot. And, guys like that, they help you out tremendously just because sometimes you can't get out your own way. And sometimes you just need another voice to tell you to shoot the ball. And Evan Turner was one of the best teammates you can have. To have him later on in my years compared to possibly having him at Ohio State, it's just kind of mind-boggling to think about it because, that was the whole question. If Evan Turner was going to stay, I was coming in. My freshman year had been his senior year. And then, a couple years later, boom, we're teammates at the highest level. So it was definitely a blessing.
For sure. So, we got a lot of drama going in the NBA. It's always kind of been like that, but social media even more so. You like the Lakers to repeat. Do you think the whole thing with the Nets and Harden and Kyrie and KD is going to work out? Giannis's investment in the Bucks going to pay off. What are your just overall thoughts on the NBA and how it's going these days?
I just think you got to let things play itself out. You just never know what's going to happen in a 7-game series. If you look at it, the Lakers are playing great basketball. Clippers are playing great basketball. It's different. People are outside the bubble, traveling now. I can only imagine the quarantine rules that they have right now where they say they can't leave the house. So a lot of things are just – their routines are messed up. So you just got to let it play itself out. You really don't know who's going to win. You got a lot of great teams out there. You got, the Brooklyn Nets. They just got to mesh. There was no training camp for them. So they're playing – as they're playing real games, they're practicing almost and working on who they need to be. You got the Clippers. They're still going through their stuff just because it wasn't a true training camp this year. The Lakers, they're riding high, but they still got to implement Montrezl Harrell, Marc Gasol, and Dennis Schroeder, and they've done a great job so far. But there's so much more improvement that you're going to see from these teams as the season goes on.
I assume you had to guard, bigs and then stretch guys alike in the league. Who's somebody that, when they had it, you were like, this is gonna be tricky, this is gonna be difficult. Who kind of made you sweat out there?
Andre Blatch, honestly. Andre Blatch was like a 7'2" guard. He had everything. He could shoot, he can post, he can handle. He was like a 7'2" guard, honestly, and that was the guy that gave me the most trouble, night in, night out.
He was on the Nets, right?
Yeah, he played for the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they had some teams back then. They gave the Bulls some trouble, I remember. All right, last question, Jared. You've been really generous with your time. Switching it up on you, switching sports. Who you like on Sunday in the Super Bowl? I don't know if you can go with a Michigan guy in Tom Brady, but what are you thinking for Sunday?
I have a saying that sometimes loyalty can be stupidity, and I'm no dummy, but this is actually one of the hardest Super Bowls you have to pick. You have you got the GOAT versus baby GOAT, and it's just, I don't know. That's tough. That's honestly tough. If I had to pick, I would go with Tom Brady just because it's Tom Brady. It's kind of hard to pick against him, but at the same time, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know. It's up in the air, 50-50.
All right, should be fun. We'll be watching, obviously, and then we'll be watching this comeback of yours, and then maybe down the road someday we'll be coworkers. I know you might dip your toe into the media game someday, so
I would love that. I would love
to see that as well.
I'll keep that in my back pocket.
I mean, from this interview and others I've seen you do, you'd have no problem sliding in, taking someone's job. So appreciate you jumping on, man. Really enjoyed it. It was fun reflecting, and best of luck to you here going forward.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks once again to Jared for joining the show. Appreciate him jumping on. Best of luck to him in his basketball pursuits. Another great Ohio State player that we had on the show. I know we had David Lighty on a few months ago, and it really is impressive. I know I brought it up briefly to Jared, but like how tight that Ohio State group seems to stick together. They're always around Columbus. A lot of them still live around there. They're always hooping, at pickup games or in the TBT and chirping on social media in a friendly way. Like it's pretty crazy how tight knit that alumni base is. So always enjoy having any of those guys on to talk hoops. All right, we'll toss it over now to Harold Shelton, BTN's manager of research. Harold, if you've not listened to the show on a regular basis, will jump on in season to break down Big Ten football, Big Ten basketball in this case, and he does it in a way that I am not talented enough to do. He can weave in stats, information, has a great analytical mind, and glad we have been able to utilize him and get his stats off the paper and onto the airwaves. And we'll do it once again. We'll talk plenty of Ohio State basketball since they've been playing so well, even though we do not know the result of the Ohio State-Iowa game on Thursday night yet. Talk about the strength of the Big Ten and if it can compete with the likes of Baylor and Gonzaga. We will talk about some initiatives of Big Ten Network that Harold's involved in, and a handful of other things as well. So we'll toss it over now to Big Ten Network Manager of Research, Harold Shelton. All right, very pleased to be joined as always by Harold Shelton, BTN's in-house researcher, the manager of research at Big Ten Network. H, good to have you back. What's going on, dude?
Good to be back. Thanks for having me. And I see you got a nice jacket there. I need to figure out where you got it because I need to get one too.
Yeah, man. It's funny because our little digital department got this shipment a few weeks ago. We got some nice stuff. I want the black Nike one that we see like the on-air people get. There's like different levels of connections, I feel like. So, we got our little digital plug. Studios got their, I think, plug from HR since they're such front-facing individuals. And then, we have some people who are still rocking the old logos. So you got to hit up our bosses and see if we can swag you out since you are on-camera talent. You're on this show on YouTube.
Exactly. I mean, I got the T-shirt that, everyone was able to get. It was so nice to be able to get. But, yeah, I want to, at least get that jacket. If I can't get the black one that the other on-air guys, let me at least get the gray one you got.
Yeah, it's a little North Face action.
Okay.
If they're watching on
I know that's warm.
The challenge is like for these types of episodes, when I record on different days. So I had Jared Sullinger a couple days ago, and now you today, obviously, and like I try to keep the same outfit so it looks consistent. And so I'm like digging up the same thing that I wore 2 days ago. Got to make sure I don't throw it in the laundry or anything like that. So
there's four problems right there.
Exactly. For our hundreds and sometimes thousands of viewers on YouTube, we appreciate all them. Obviously, if you're not, if you're just listening to this, give it a shot on YouTube. Sometimes you can see what we look like when we're talking about hoops or football or whatever it is. So that's my endorsement for our viewing experience.
Sell it. Gotta sell it.
All right. Also, I do want to point out it was pretty cool. Like throughout the month of January, I'm sure you had a similar experience, but like there was kind of an endless stream of shipments coming in. I think HR felt bad that like there were no in-person events, and to be honest, they were probably saving a little money on, no happy hours, things like that, no events. So we had some like Fox swag come in. Then there was some Big Ten Network swag. It was my birthday, so I got like a birthday shipment. I got a new chair come in. So like I just had stuff coming to my door, and it made the work from home experience a little less lonely.
Yeah, I agree with that. My wife actually laughed at me about that because we're just collecting blankets now. Like, Fox sent a blanket, the network sent a blanket. I got the blanket from Media Day a couple years ago. So we're just stacking up blankets. I had a birthday in December, so I was able to get a little charger for that. I got a little serving bowl for the popcorn that Fox sent, and they've been taking good care of us these last few months.
The blanket thing is hilarious because my friends say the same thing. We have just a gluttony of blankets laying around between the Fox and Big Ten ones. It was actually funny, though, that Fox box they sent us was like a giant shipment. I'm like, what is in here? And they packed it, and then there was like 4 or 5 things that like they definitely did not need a huge box to send out. I wonder if they had some, boxes laying around they just had to get rid of, and so they just packed them with peanut packer and sent the blanket and the bowl and all that stuff.
Yeah, somebody texted me and asked the same thing, and I said, you know what? I'll take all the stuff that's in it, no matter how big the box is. So even though it did seem, a little big for the stuff that was in it, I appreciate it all the same.
All right. Well, this is like office insider talk. The listeners are probably either jealous they don't have any of the swag or bored by now. So we'll get into the discussion a little bit. Harold, I want to inject a little bit of a new wrinkle into these conversations. I don't know why we haven't done this because we usually have these interviews after the primary guest each week. And, the guest is obviously Big Ten related almost every week. It's somebody that you know and probably watched or are familiar with. So I'm going to start leading these conversations off with just your thoughts on the guest of the episode and maybe memories you had about them. This week it's Jared Sullinger, like I mentioned. So just give me your overall take on Jared, your memories of watching him play, what his legacy is, and we'll continue to do this now, 3 or 4 years into this podcast. I don't know why we haven't been doing it, like I said, but it's never too late. So thoughts on Sully?
Yeah, I was gonna say better late than never. Sully was a dude who came in, was an instant impact guy, winner, multiple Big Ten titles, led Ohio State to a Final Four. And, I feel like he had 2 really dominant years. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because the NBA career wasn't as long, but he kind of seems to be more and more underappreciated as time has gone on. I know when we had our all-decade team exercise, and, I was lucky to be part of a panel that voted on it, and he was the first teamer for me. But it looks like I was one of the few that actually put him in that spot. I just thought he was a really, really impactful player. If you needed a bucket late, you can get it from him. Even though he wasn't the most athletic guy, he used his body well to carve out space, make sure he cleaned up the glass. And, I'd say between Ohio State and Michigan State, like when Draymond was there at that time, like they had some really nice battles in 2012. And I think those 3 battles are what I remember the most, especially that Big Ten championship game in 12.
Yeah, and it's hard to get to the league and stick for a little while, even though I know he wants to get back and stick, as a tweener. 6'8", 6'9", a little undersized, not as quick, but, he was in the league for 4 or 5 years and had some good years. I was looking up his basketball reference line. He had a few years, 13 points a game for Boston, good teams over there. So, it's cool to talk to him. I love getting guys that were at that, at the NBA level. We get plenty of people who played overseas, but it's cool to have like somebody on the show who played with KG. We could ask him about Kevin Garnett's stories and stuff like that. And you mentioned those Michigan State battles. I remember those great Ohio State teams, including that 2012 Final Four team. And the first thing he mentioned when I told him I went to Illinois kind of before we actually started recording is that Brandon Paul game, the 43 points, where that was just a lot of great players on the floor that night. And that Illinois team actually ended up being bad. They collapsed. They had beaten Ohio State, got to, I think, like number 15 in the country. That Ohio State team goes on to the Final Four, and the Illinois team with Myers Leonard and Brandon Paul and DJ Richardson, those guys completely fall off. But it's funny that was one of the things that stuck out in his mind, because that was probably a painful loss. One of few in his career. I think he only lost 10 games or something like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'd say his freshman year, that team was probably the best team in the country. Just came up a little bit short against Kentucky in the Sweet 16. Brandon Knight hit a jumper to beat them. But, they were the overall number 1 seed. They were rolling everybody. I definitely thought that they were one of the best teams of the last 10, 15 years in the Big Ten. It's just that, when you don't get to that final weekend, you kind of get forgotten about. And even though he did get there in 2012, the team wasn't as good. And so maybe people view it a little differently.
Right. So we'll talk a little more Ohio State, current, present day, a very Ohio State heavy episode, because they have been surging. The Bucks are hot, as they say. We stole that from, it was an Ohio State pitcher. His last name's Magno. I'm forgetting his first name, but he had a viral clip a couple of years ago in the baseball tournament where he's like, Bucks are hot. You don't like it when the Bucks are hot. So we will talk surging Buckeyes in a second. But first, I do want to get your input on, you mentioned the All-Decade Project you were a part of. We are currently taking part in another Big Ten Network initiative for February, Black History Month. And you had a leading hand in initiating this particular project. It kind of, we always do something for Black History Month at Big Ten Network as a way to highlight and honor impactful people and individuals. But you started and had a big role in leading a diversity effort at Big Ten Network, especially over the summer with what happened in the events in this country. And now it's playing out as we honor individuals in a new initiative. So if you could just explain a little bit what I'm talking about and let the audience know what they should be looking out for in February on Big Ten Network's, not only the channel during games, but also on our social platforms.
Yeah, so kind of going back to the summer of what you were talking about, we developed a big impact series where we talked to we had like three or four different conversations where we talked to current athletes and administrators and kind of how they were dealing with things on campus, ways that they can create more diverse environments, how to support athlete initiatives, things of that sort. And so we continued with the big impact umbrella, and we decided to come up with pioneers of the Big Ten. And so we took one male and one female from all 14 Big Ten schools. So it'd be 28 people in 28 days to match the month of February. We'll also have Commissioner Warren as well. So we actually had 29. Um, and so from there, my job was to just, I had an idea, back in the fall. I wanted to see if it could get pulled off. I wasn't really sure how to do it, but I figured it'd be a really cool way to kind of, talk about some people that we knew and talk about some people that we didn't know, and kind of show what they did on the field or on the court, but more importantly, how they impacted other people's lives once their careers are over. And so, you know, what started out as an idea turned into 28 vignettes between 30 seconds and a minute that are gonna run on digital and on TV and games, and we'll have some interviews with a lot of the guests as well that'll be out on YouTube. And the project started on February 1st. We've got 4 of them that have already been rolled out. And I definitely can't take full credit by any means. I just had an idea, and I kind of came up with some of the names, but there's been a huge help in studio with the editors, putting everything together. And so, I'm really proud of the teamwork that's going on with everybody kind of collaborating, and the fact that we were able to get 13 different sports represented for the 28 people is pretty cool too.
Yeah, so one pioneer highlighted per day in the month of February. Those vignettes are going out every day. We'll have some interviews too with some of the individuals who are honored. So yeah, big shout out to you, but also Denny Blunt, Jacob Ruffman, guys behind the scenes on the TV side who have been working really hard, I know, to get these out in a short time frame. So
shout Ross out too, Ross Patton.
Yeah, Ross Patton for sure, absolutely. Mark Carmen, people like that. So definitely, keep your eyes on the Big Ten Network social media channels. Learn something, because I know the Jesse Owens, of course, C. Vivian Stringers of the Big Ten universe, but I didn't know who Anson Carter was, who's a black hockey player for Michigan State who played in the NHL. So cool stuff like that you can learn, and people whose names deserve to be heard. So thanks for taking some time there, H, to explain that. We'll get into the basketball scene now as we shift gears and talk about what is remaining as one of the strongest Big Ten basketball seasons we've seen. And we can just take it from the top, I think, as far as the storylines go. And we had a great top 15 or so matchup. I think it was maybe top 20 at the time, but great matchup this past Friday night in Illinois, Iowa. I think that was probably the Big Ten game of the year. If you look at Ken Palm's game scores, I think it was the top game played so far in college basketball this year. We've had some other noteworthy teams like Ohio State we mentioned. I think they've won 5 of 6 at this point. We got a huge game tonight. Iowa and Ohio State are playing, so our conversation is a little dated, and we don't know what happens yet in that one, but it will have Big Ten race implications. And just want to get your thoughts, first of all, and we'll start there since this is a very Ohio State episode, H, on if you think this Ohio State run is reflective of what they're capable of in March.
Bucks are hot, right? I mean, the fact that EJ Liddell has kind of turned into a go-to guy for them. You saw the promise there a year ago. You thought he'd be a pretty good player, but he's definitely seemed to kind of put it all together and is kind of taking more of an alpha role on. And I think that's helped everybody else, because now they don't have to rely on Dwayne Washington to score a lot of points. Getting CJ Walker back healthy has been huge to kind of stabilize everything. Justin Arns has been a sniper from 3. They haven't really needed Seth Towns to come in and ball, but he's made plays, and they got Justice Suing who's come in and made plays. So they've used the transfer portal well. I haven't between Walker, Suing, and Towns. All three of those guys have been able to contribute for the last couple of years. And Liddell, he's been averaging about 20 points over the last 5 games. He's really, really stepped up. And, I told you about my man crush on Chris Holtman. We talk about it every time. He continues to show why they're so good. And I don't know how many people would have thought that Ohio State would have the best offensive efficiency that they've had since Sullinger's 2010-2011 team. So they're playing really, really well right now.
Yeah, I was talking to Jared about that, just how those pieces fit so well together under Chris Holtman. We've talked about it, like you said. He can just plug and play. He gets transfers that fit. DJ Carton leaves. Caleb Wesson graduates, and they take a step forward. It's crazy. Like, nothing against those guys, obviously, but Chris Holtman just reloads. So big credit to Ohio State. Really excited for that game tonight. Those styles will be interesting to see, especially since you said Ohio State's a sneaky offensive powerhouse. So that'll be fun to watch. And Ohio State, Iowa are two of those teams near the top of the Big Ten. Can't forget about Michigan, even though they are on that COVID pause right now. And I'm just looking at Ken Pom right now, and you can look at the net or top 25 AP, however you want to slice it up. But the Big Ten, it's a weird place to be because they have so many teams near the top, right? You have 4 in the top 10 of Ken Pom with Ohio State, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, and then Wisconsin's at number 11. So really, I should say 5 of the top 11 teams. Purdue just entered the top 25 before taking a tough loss. A game they really should have won against Maryland. Rutgers is kind of coming back to resemble some form of how they started this season. And, we had Minnesota entering the top 25, and we'll see if they can maintain that level of play throughout the year. Maryland is like the spoiler for all the Big Ten teams this year. They have 4 top 25 wins, 3 of them on the road. It's been crazy to see what they've been able to do. Penn State isn't going anywhere. So there's so much good basketball being played in the Big Ten. It's just weird, though, to, one, have Michigan be on this pause and not forget about them, but, look up and remember that they're still 2 games ahead in the Big Ten race. And then have Baylor and Gonzaga kind of on their own plane almost. And in a year where college basketball blue bloods kind of stink, right? Like Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina is not as good as usual. All these teams that normally stand between the Big Ten and a national championship. You'd think this is the year for the Big Ten to break through, and then you have these almost not untouchable teams because we saw Iowa push them a little bit. We don't know how Michigan would fare against them. We saw Illinois challenge Baylor before Baylor kind of turned it up. How are you balancing kind of the juxtaposition of the Big Ten is amazing, but there's still 2 titans that you'll really have to kind of conquer in March?
I think the biggest thing is that you have to find a way to get as high a seed as possible so you avoid a Gonzaga or Baylor before the final weekend of the season. I think it's imperative if Michigan can bounce back from being off, 2-3 weeks, that they can, hit the ground running so they could stay as a 1 seed and not have to deal with those teams until the Final Four. I think it's important, for an Ohio State or an Illinois or an Iowa, if they can get a 2 to be away from Gonzaga and Baylor. And so to try to be, the best 2 seed possible so you can try to avoid those 2 teams. Like you said, those 2 look like they're on another plane right now. You always wonder about the Zags just because, they play a tough schedule early, and then for 2 to 3 months, they kind of just beat up on their own league, and you wonder, how battle tested they'll be when the chips are down. Baylor, I don't think will have that issue just because the Big 12 has been really good, and the way they play, they're so good on defense. They and Michigan are the only teams in the top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency in the country. So, the fact that those 2, that the fact that I think Baylor is actually 3rd in both. So that just goes to show you how good they are. But I'm a little nervous about Michigan just because when you can't practice for 2-3 weeks and you're playing so well, you got all of this momentum, and they're going to try to make up these games, as many as possible. So now you're going to run into a situation like Iowa's had to run into, where you got 3 games in 6 days. Michigan State's had to do similar things. Penn State's had to do similar things. And so can Michigan hit the ground running once we get back and then go through a brutal gauntlet in a brutal league with not a lot of rest? That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate this happened to Michigan, right in the middle of what will shape up to be a special season. Obviously, they can still salvage it, but it's also unfortunate, right, with Big Ten title race implications. Like, you can't really speculate because we don't really know which games will be made up, if they can get all the games in. And, if they're not, like, how the Big Ten champion is determined. Like, in football, Ohio State was pretty clearly on another level, and they adjusted accordingly. Basketball, it's going to be interesting to see how, if Michigan gets under 20 games in, and your Iowa's, Illinois, or Ohio State's plays 20 but has 4 or 5 losses. I don't think anyone knows at this point what's gonna happen. So it'll just be interesting to see. It's too bad, obviously, and I feel bad for the athletes at Michigan who are basically sitting around right now and are watching everyone else play.
Yeah, and the thing is, with the Ohio State angle in football, we saw them play Indiana. Indiana was clearly their biggest challenger. They beat them, so there's no issue there of putting them in, even though they have fewer games. With Michigan right now, the best team they've played is Wisconsin. They haven't played Iowa yet. They haven't played Illinois yet. They haven't played Ohio State yet. And so we just don't know how those matchups would turn out. So say Michigan only can play, 17 games and everyone else gets 20, but they miss Ohio State and Illinois. Is that a fair champion? If the race winds up being close, we'll see. Just right now, not taking anything away from Michigan. Like, they have been clearly the best team in the Big Ten. They had one slip up in Minnesota, but other than that, they've been rolling people. And so, they've got 3 guys that are top 10 nationally in their positions. They're, Wagner's up for Defensive Player of the Year as well. And so, like, they're doing everything they need to do on the court. I'll just be curious to see if they don't get some of those games in with teams that are challengers to them. How will that be viewed nationally?
Yeah, and I've watched a ton of Big Ten basketball obviously this year. Some outside of the Big Ten as much as I can. Wednesday night, this past evening was brutal for a lot of top teams. Villanova went down pretty easily. Houston got beat by East Carolina. Creighton, teams like that, are losing. And I watched Oklahoma, Texas Tech the other night. I don't know if it's just bias or if I caught teams on a bad night, but I do think these Big Ten teams near the top are better than a lot of these top so-called top 10 teams from other conferences. I know that just sounds like company man speak, but like, I don't know. I was not impressed by Oklahoma. I think they had some injury problems, and Villanova's been great. And I know they had some COVID issues as well, but they looked really brutal last night. I know all teams have off nights. So Houston hasn't, even though I think their metrics say otherwise. I don't know. I just don't know. Outside of Baylor and Gonzaga, who are obviously tremendous, I think the Big Ten can go up against anyone at the top of these other leagues. And one other thought on other teams, you kind of touched on it briefly, but like, how would you feel being a Gonzaga fan? Like, is it worth it? And I know, if a Gonzaga fan, I don't think any of them will get a hold of this or hear this, they would probably take offense to this, but do you really want to go 2 months every single year, not basically playing exhibition games? I know you'll get challenged once in a while by your St. Mary's, your Santa Claras, whoever. But and this year's different because they are outstanding, and any fan would take a year like this. But would it not get tiresome to do this schedule every year and be the clear best team in the conference every single season?
No, I mean, credit to them. They figured out a niche where, they've been able to dominate a league, and it's gotten to a point where they've done enough nationally, non-conference, November, December, and in March to elevate themselves to be a big boy. And, that's really, really rare to see, because I remember I was, I still am a University of Detroit fan. And I remember when Butler was in the Midwestern Collegiate Conference with them. And, Butler was just kind of they're a good team. They make the tournament every once in a while, and then they just continue to win and win and win and move to the Big East. And a lot of times when these teams do that, like Dayton will go to the A10, teams just could, gradually move up. And the fact that Gonzaga has been able to do what they've done and stay in that league, I mean, I have no problem with it. Load up as much as possible early. You've got your recruiting that way. You're going to be on national TV. Mark Few's got it rolling. Credit to him. He stayed when he could have left. Dan Monson left and it didn't work out for him. And Mark Few saw that and it's like, you know what? I can build a power right here. I don't have to leave. I can win a national championship from here. So if I'm Gonzaga, the key is I'm trying to win a national championship. So what's the best way I can do that? Let me just stay and dominate this league, still test myself in November, December, because now, we're a name. So we can get to Maui and Atlantis and, all these other big tournaments. And we can get a top 2-3 seed every year and, see what happens in March. I think it's a great plan for them.
Yeah, those are good points. And I think I'm a prisoner of the moment a little bit because I'll tune in to watch Gonzaga once in a while and they're like, they're playing Pepperdine in like a high school gym. I'm just like, this is just no fun. Like it really isn't. However, you're very right. And I want to be clear that first of all, Gonzaga played an awesome schedule this offseason than they normally do, or that not offseason, this non-conference season. And that's, normal for them. They take on any and all challengers in the non-conference. And, Gonzaga is being a Gonzaga fan. It's a charmed existence, right? Like it's at this point, I know a Gonzaga fan who's my age and all he's known is great basketball. I would take that any day. Like as a college basketball fan, 99% of college basketball fans would trade, I think, the success that that they have had for Gonzaga's success in the Mark Few era. So I don't want to disparage that. It's just in January and February, that's just a slog to get to March, I feel like. And it would test me, I think, as a fan during that wait.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think it's kind of like in NBA or MLB when the whole goal is just to get to the playoffs, right? Like we know we're good enough for the regular season. None of these games really matter. Like at the end of the day, just get me to March. And that's kind of what Gonzaga is. It's like, all right, let's do enough early to make sure we get a good seed. If we drop one conference game, so be it, whatever. I know St. Mary's is our rival, so let's beat them. Or maybe, on occasion, BYU might challenge. So, okay, let's try to get them. But other than that, they're going to take everybody's best shot. I'm sure they'll sleepwalk through some games, but they're so talented now that, they can just pretty much overcome anything. They're getting, elite recruits. They're getting elite transfers. And, I mean, they've just got it rolling up there. And so if I have to put up with a 2-month slog to get to where I need to be in March, then I'll live with that.
Yeah, they're terrifying. So that'll conclude the Zags portion of this podcast. Before we go, H, I do want to get your thoughts on one, maybe two Big Ten teams who are super intriguing and just kind of strange at this point in the season. Maryland and Penn State. Penn State beat Wisconsin, then turned around, got smoked by Wisconsin. So they were playing better basketball until Tuesday night. Maryland had, although they've stacked 7 losses at this point, they've beaten 4 top 25 teams, 3 on the road, 2 top 10 teams, I believe. What do we do with that type of tournament resume? Like, I think Maryland's going to make the tournament at this point, right? As long as they don't lose too many more games, especially in a weird year. Is Maryland going to make the tournament? Does Penn State have a shot? And just what are your overall thoughts on these two squads that were kind of written off before the season started?
Yeah, it's funny that Maryland, like you said, they lead the nation with 4 wins against ranked teams, and all 4 have come as an unranked team, which is funny. And Penn State, they're one of, I believe it's 6 teams with multiple wins against AP top 15 as an unranked team. Another one of those teams they're tied with is Maryland. So the fact they're playing each other this weekend, actually, so that should be a fun game. I do think Maryland does have a chance to get to the tournament. I believe I saw on ESPN Joe Lunardi had them as the last team in after they beat Purdue. So they're kind of hovering right now. And I just think the fact that, the resumes are going to look different because there weren't as many non-conference games to take advantage of. And so the fact that you're in a league where you got a chance to play, a top 30, quad one, quad two net team, you know, pretty much every night, you got a chance to enhance that resume. And the win-loss records are going to look a little different because you're not going to have all those games that, those bye games that you play against quad three and quad four teams to elevate your record. Those are pretty much gone. And so you're going to, operate from a 26, 27-ish game slate. So if you're, 15-12, but you got 6 quad one wins, that's probably going to be a lot better than, some team from another conference whose record is similar, but they didn't have nearly as many chances. So I think Maryland's got a really good shot of making it. And I think it just kind of goes to show, as we've talked about this league in general. I mean, we've had 10 different teams ranked in the top 25 of the AP poll. 9 of them have been in the top 20 at some point. And Maryland isn't one of those, but they continue to, undercut some people along the way. So they're certainly talented enough, and the Big Ten provides them a lot of opportunities to get some more wins to get into that tournament.
Yeah, and I do want to give a shout out to Penn State, just because, no one would forgive that, or no one would blame them for just having a total teardown rebuild type year with an interim coach. They lost their head coach unexpectedly right before the season. They lost their best player in Lamar Stevens. They lost Mike Watkins. And even if they don't make the tournament, I would still bet against that right now, just considering the climb they still have ahead of them. It's been an impressive year how they've stuck together and played hard, dealt with the COVID pause, and kept that program on its feet. They didn't have to do that, and nobody would have blinked, but they've kept things together. So, shout out to Jim Ferry and Brockington and Wheeler and those guys who have and Miles Dredd and guys that have they've held it together there at Penn State.
And just think about where Penn State would be if they would have just held on to some of the games where they had a really good chance of winning. I mean, they were up big against Seton Hall, let it go. They pushed Michigan. I know they were leading in the second half in Ann Arbor before letting it go back in December. They lose in overtime in Indiana. They had Ohio State on the ropes on the road a little over a week ago. So imagine if they win 2 of those, they're 8-6 instead of 6-8. Resume looks a lot better. They're already 37th in KenPom as it is. So imagine if they had 2 big wins instead of losing all 4 of those games. I mean, they'd be right there. And, to your point about Penn State, they always play hard. That one thing you can always count on with them, even if they aren't as talented, even if they aren't as physical, even if they aren't as deep, they're going to always play hard. And they're going to give teams fits because of that. And, we saw it with Wisconsin. We saw it with Virginia Tech, 2 double-digit wins against teams that were both in the top 15 at the time. So, major shout-out to them. Let's see if they could, get Maryland. They get Michigan State coming up. They get Nebraska coming up. If you win those 3 games, if you go to 9-8, see what happens from there.
Sounds good. All right, we'll close it out there. Actually, I'll get your Super Bowl pick real quick. We don't have to analyze it or anything, but you got Chiefs or Bucks?
Chiefs.
Yeah, I think Chiefs too. I don't know. They're just
I can't bet against Mahomes. I know everybody says you can't bet against Brady, but I can't bet against Mahomes.
I think it'll be a good game. I think Brady. I think Chiefs will go up 2 scores. Brady will make it interesting. Chiefs will be too much.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, H. Thanks a lot. We will get back at it soon. I am, in my happy place right now. I love Big Ten basketball. Love when it's cooking. So hopefully, no more interruptions, no more pauses. Everyone stays healthy, and we can talk about it again soon.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to the next time.
All right, thanks once again to Harold, Jared for joining the show. Hope everyone enjoyed listening. Always appreciate everyone tuning in. If you've not listened to the show before, touched on a little bit in the Harold segment there, but we are available to be viewed on YouTube Big Ten Network's YouTube channel. Just search Take 10 Podcast. And you can subscribe to the Big Ten Network YouTube channel. And we are on our own playlist on that channel. So ever since the pandemic started, we've been able to take advantage of Zoom, get these guests on Zoom, and get these YouTube videos going. It's been a lot of fun seeing the guests, interacting with them on a regular basis. So there is that avenue. We can also be heard on all the normal major podcast platforms, your Spotify's, Apple Podcasts, obviously, Google Podcasts, Podbeam. So check us out on all those platforms. Please subscribe, rate, leave a review. We have mostly nice reviews on Apple Podcasts. You know, a couple people chirping, but it wouldn't be a legitimate podcast. We didn't have some haters. So a lot of good feedback, and we encourage you to leave some if you like the show. All right, that'll do it for this week of the Take 10 Podcast. Thanks as always to Julie Bronder for producing the show, stitching it together. Thanks again to Northwestern SPS for sponsoring it. And thanks to everyone for listening. We will talk to you soon here on the Take 10 Podcast.